My favorite way to care for people is through giving them delicious food. So obviously we're starting in the kitchen. I'm very, very excited. So I wanted to make some delicious cheddar bacon biscuits. Now in this recipe, there's a couple of really great kitchen lessons that I've learned and picked up along the way. So I wanted to share them with you. I'm gonna highlight them as we go through this recipe. But first up, we gotta start with the bacon. It's the morning. We want it to smell like bacon in here. So over here, I have got 6 strips of bacon. Just classic bacon. You can get thick cut if you're feeling it, but potato. I'm gonna get that bacon and I'm just gonna lay it down onto a parchment lined baking sheet. Now, so far, I'm talking about bacon. Nothing new, nothing exciting. But one of the best lessons that I kind of learned while I've been cooking is how to actually cook bacon. So as opposed to starting it in a hot pan, one of the best tips I have is start it cold. Just like when you're cooking something like a duck breast, if anybody's done that, you actually start that in a cold pan, and that's because it's super duper fatty. So when you're looking to kind of reduce the amount of fatty or allow some of the fat to kind of render out, you want to start it cold, because essentially what's going to happen is as that heat starts to come up, that fat starts to melt out. So as that melts out, then once it's up to full temp, then it gets crispy. So then you're not ending up with that weird kind of combination of kind of burnt, but also kind of flabby bacon. That's not good, that's not good eating. So I've got my bacon laid out on my pan. If you wanted to do this on the stove, again, just start it in a cold pan, but my very favorite way to cook bacon is in the oven, because you can cook a whole pack of bacon in one go. So I've got my bacon here. I'm gonna pop it into my cold oven. It's not on yet. I can show you, I can touch the thing. We're not on. Now, what you wanna do now is set that to go to heat to 450 degrees. Once that little boodle-doo happens and it's up to that temperature, then you set a timer. So set a timer for about 8 minutes, and then you should have perfectly crispy, totally delicious, like cartoonishly delicious looking bacon. You see all of that fat has kind of rendered out. One of my other tips with bacon, if you've got like an apple juice can or like a little kind of container, pour off all of that fat, store it in your fridge, and you've got something amazing to cook your next batch of potatoes in, because bacony potatoes, totally delish. But as you can see, that bacon has rendered out that fat and crisped up. Perfect. There's no little bits that are kind of going to be weird and chewy. It's going to be perfect all the way through. So we've got our bacon there. It's just cooling down. So now we're going to move on to biscuits. Now, my main kind of lesson I've learned in life is the worst thing in the world is when you wake up on a Saturday and you're like, I'm going to make a nice breakfast today. And you go into your cupboard or your bread box and you don't have any bread, or it's gone bad. That is the worst thing in the world. So I always think you should have some sort of bready recipe that you can whip up in a flash. And for me, in my house, that's biscuits. So to get started on biscuits, we need 2 cups of flour. I am all about all-purpose flour when it comes to biscuits. I've seen people do a whole wheat biscuit. I don't know what that is. I would not call that a biscuit. I would call that like, I don't know what I would call that. It's not a biscuit though. So all-purpose flour is perfect. It'll get nice and light and fluffy. So 2 cups of that goes into my bowl. The thing that I love about biscuits too is that you get something bready, but you don't have to bust out a big machine. You can do everything by hand, super simple, really, really tasty. So into there, we want to build some kind of situation that's going to bring leavening into this mixture. So the first way we do that for biscuits is with chemical leaveners. And chemical leaveners are like baking powder and baking soda. So first we need about 1.5 tablespoons of baking powder, which is a lot of baking powder. That's gonna give us real nice lift and make these fluffy and light. So go in with that tablespoon, and I mean, you at home should probably measure accurately, but I'm going wild today. I'm feeling it. It's gonna be good. And then into there, I'm also gonna add in some baking soda. Now, baking soda reacts once when it hits something acidic. Kind of like when you'd make those volcanoes when you were a kid with the baking soda and the vinegar. So that's gonna puff up when we add in the liquid. Baking powder reacts twice. It reacts once with something acidic, and then it reacts again when it hits the heat. So you get that initial boost, again with that baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon of that, and then you get the residual boost from that baking powder. So just add in 1/4 teaspoon. Now to season this up, I'm going in with a teaspoon of salt. I'm using kosher salt. If you're using sea salt, I'd go in with a little bit less. Kosher salt is less salty tasting than sea salt, so this is perfect for me. Give that a mix up. Now at this point, if you wanted to make a sweeter biscuit or something, you could add in some cinnamon. You could add in just the tiniest amount of sugar, not too much, because that makes them less kind of fluffy. You could even add in some garlic powder here if you wanted to go a little more savory. But we've already got that bacon. I feel like that's gonna be savory enough, but we're gonna add more stuff. All right, so give that a good mix up. And now we've got those chemical leaveners in there. Now we want to add in something else that's going to bring deliciousness, but also more lift. So for that, I need butter, which I think is in the fridge. Let me take a gander. Aha, we got it. So you need a 1/4 cup of butter. When you are working with biscuit dough, a lot of people think it's really fatty, almost like a pie dough, but biscuit dough is actually really nice and lean. So there's only a 1/4 cup of butter in all these biscuits, which is not a lot. So I'm just gonna get that 1/4 cup, that's about half a stick, and I'm just gonna cut that in pats. Now I like to do it what I call cowboy style, which is kind of like this. Be careful, but with a paring knife, you actually are supposed to bring it towards your thumb. Just be very careful with it. And the reason I'm cutting this into pats is that's gonna help it work into that dough easier, help you produce less gluten, because we don't want a nice gluten-y biscuit, and that'll be beautiful. So just cut those into little pats, and then we get to get our hands a little bit dirty. So with your fingers, tips of your fingers, if you've got cold hands. If you've got hot hands, biscuits might not be in your future. It's gonna melt, it's gonna get a little too weird. Find someone in your life that's got cold hands. I got a friend backstage, his name's Kyle. He put my microphone on this morning, coldest hands in the world. So you're gonna just give that a little bit of a toss to get all of that butter nice and coated with that flour. Then you just wanna pick up the little pats and kind of just smush them. Kind of like you're playing Monopoly and you're winning and you're counting all your money. That's what you wanna do. So just smush it in, and you want those little bits of butter just to be broken up. Make them about the size of like a green pea or even like a walnut. Not a walnut, that's too big. What's a good sized nut? Pistachio? Maybe like a hazelnut? Hazelnut, that's what we're looking for. That's the nut. Antonio likes, there you go, okay. So just work that in, and now we're gonna add in our flavors. So the first thing we obviously need to add in is that beautiful bacon. So we've got 6 strips of bacon right here. I'm just gonna lift those off, they're nice and cooled. And it's okay that I'm nice and kind of floury, because I'm actually gonna crumble it right in here. If your bacon isn't crispy, if you didn't cook it in that cold oven and bring it up to temperature, you're not gonna be able to do this. Yeah, like that looks absolutely delicious. Just crumble that bacon right on into that beautiful bowl of all that buttery, floury deliciousness. Then I'm going in with some cheese, because why not cheese? I mean, you got it. So I have got a cup of cheddar cheese here, just shredded, that I'm gonna add on in. And when you are making biscuits, your hands will get messy, so get ready. Now finally, I'm gonna add green, because we got cheese, we got bacon. You gotta pretend you're healthy sometimes. So I've got some chives. I'm just gonna thinly slice just about, I'd say, 2 to 3 tablespoons of chives. You could also do green onions, but again, if you wanted to leave these out, that would be perfect. Or if you wanted to make these a little more fall-y, you could go in with some beautiful sage. That would be amazing. Pop that on in. Give that a little bit of a mix-up just to coat everything. And then what you wanna do is add in your liquid. Now for the liquid, because we've used chemical leaveners, we need something a little bit acidic. So for that, I'm going in with buttermilk. I love buttermilk. It is one of my favorite things. I know you're gonna buy it and be like, Mary, what am I gonna do with all the rest of this buttermilk? Just make more biscuits. It's gonna be great. All right, so you need we got some biscuit heads in the audience, I'm into it. All right, I'm going in with about 1.25 cups to start. Once you add that 1.25 cups, you might need to add more. My final kind of advice when you are making biscuits is this is what I like to call a grandma recipe. And a grandma recipe is something that the more you make it, the better it gets. The better you get at it, just keep trying and trying again, because the thing is, in the kitchen, this is probably the best advice. If you mess up, that's just a lesson. You just now know how to not mess up biscuits, so next time you won't do it. So we just wanna add that milk in, that buttermilk, give it a mix up. You want a nice shaggy looking dough that kind of looks like a dog's breakfast. I might need a bit more buttermilk. It's like, look at this beautiful mess of biscuit dough. Remember before the break, I said it should kind of look like a dog's breakfast? That's what it's supposed to look like. I like recipes that at one point or another in the recipe, you feel like you're messing up. And then it all comes out in the wash. That's what I love about cooking. It's the one point in life that I like to be kind of messy, much to the chagrin of my mother, but that's fine. Okay, so this is a tip that I learned actually recently on this show. We had cookbook authors and bakery owners from The Kitten and the Bear in, and they make amazing scones. So they actually taught me how to really start working on laminating the dough. So in this batter, or in this dough, we have that beautiful baking powder and baking soda that's gonna give lift. Then we also have the butter in there, which is gonna give another little bit of lift. And then on top of that, we wanna laminate this dough. So laminating a dough dough is kind of similar to puff pastry, something like puff pastry. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dust my work surface with a good amount of flour, and then we wanna start almost flattening and folding this dough. So I've got the dough here. This is the tip that I learned from the people at Kitten and the Bear. So as opposed to dumping this out and flattening it right away, grab a little ball of the dough and stick it down, and then continue building almost like a tower of biscuit dough. Just pop that on top, pop that on top. It's kind of fun. I feel like a kid again for some reason, because I'm just building like, remember those stackable cups? Yes. What a hoot and a half, man, that was a delight. You just wanna keep adding that until all of that dough is mixed up. And if you have any little bits of flour left in the bowl, just leave them there. They don't need to be part of the party. If they don't wanna come, they don't need to come. So again, we've got our tower of dough. Then I just wanna press this down. So what I've done here is I've actually already built about 5 layers of that dough. So it's gonna give us flake and layer. Super easy. Thank you so much to the Kitten and the Bear. Again, if you're looking for a good scone, go there. What a delight. A little bit more flour on top, and we're gonna keep building those layers. So what I wanna do is just press this out to about an inch-ish thick, and then you wanna fold it closed almost like you would a book. So grab half of it, give it a fold, and press down again. So we've just built more layers. You wanna do this another 2 to 3 times, so just press and fold. And as you can see, it starts almost shaping up. Starts looking a little neater, like a little package. So just press it down again to that about inch, and then give it another fold. This is the side that's not cute, but if I flip it over, perfect. Absolutely perfect little bit of biscuit dough. So now at this point, you get to choose what shape you want your biscuits to be. I like a round biscuit. I like the size. I like what it does. If you wanted, you could do square, easy peasy, just chop right through this dough. But what I'm gonna do is use about a 3-inch round cutter. And I'm gonna dip that in my flour first, just to make sure it doesn't stick in this dough. And when you cut through, you wanna go straight down. So pop it on top, push straight down. That's gonna make sure you don't seal those edges, because if you seal those edges, they're not gonna be able to puff up the same. So a little bit of that, bit of a shake, and then you get a perfect little biscuit. You can also already kind of see some of those beautiful lines in there. That's gonna give you flake and layer. So I'm gonna pop those onto baking sheets. You just wanna keep going until you use up as much of the dough as possible. Once you've got those punched out, you can easily regather this dough, press it down again, and you're gonna end up with more biscuits. I only do that about maybe 1 or 2 times, because the more you press it, the more gluten you develop. So then, at this point, you think I'm gonna put them in the oven, don't you? I'm not. I am going into the freezer. So at this point, you can actually freeze this dough fully solid and bake them from frozen. But you wanna put these in the freezer for at least 10 minutes. That's gonna re-chill that fat and make them absolutely perfect and ready to go into the oven. So I've got some here. What I'm gonna do as well, just for fun, a little bit of butter on top, never hurt anybody. So I've got about 2 tablespoons of melted butter, just brushed right over top. If you wanted, you could add a little bit of crunchy sea salt on there. That would be amazing. This is gonna just encourage more golden brown power on the top, which is always a delight. All right. Then you wanna pop these into that 340-degree oven, really, really hot, because you want that heat to hit that butter and make it kind of expand and evaporate. So pop those in. Bake those for about 14 to 18 minutes. That's a bit of a discrepancy, but again, it's a grandma recipe. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it takes less time. You know those ones where they're like, put a cup of flour in, but then you realize it's a mug? And you're like, that's not a cup. But then you end up with something that looks like these. They smell and look absolutely amazing. Honestly, these little guys, fresh, hot out of the oven, are a perfect little treat. The best thing to make on the weekend, just pop them into a little basket, serve them upside your next dinner party. No one is leaving your house though, just a warning. But I think the best part of biscuits, breaking them open, getting that flake, that little bit of bacon in there, maybe a little extra butter on there too, just for some deliciousness. And the ultimate lesson, food is for sharing. So I'm gonna give this to my bud, Chris Corrado, who's on camera right now. Oh, he's digging in. Yeah. You into it? That's a good biscuit. Hey, Mary here. What did you think? Drop your comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of the good stuff.